He just wanted a doughnut. A quiet bite. A moment of nostalgia in the very bakery he bought under a hidden name. But what Michael B. Jordan heard behind that counter wasn't sugar and spice, it was betrayal, cruelty, and a truth that shook him more than any role he'd ever played. What would you do if your own employees turned your dream into a nightmare? And what if the person they were hurting was someone you had once been? The morning sunlight filtered through the windows of the small bakery on Melrose, casting soft golden light across the polished counters and the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls. Customers trickled in for their morning fix, lattes, crullers, and idle chatter about weekend plans. Among them was a man in a black hoodie and worn jeans, his face half-shadowed by a baseball cap. He looked like any other local. No one recognized the subtle charisma, the grace in his walk, or the way people unconsciously made room for him. It was Michael B. Jordan, A-list actor, producer, and philanthropist, playing a role no one knew about, that of the anonymous owner. He strolled in like a stranger, offering a quiet nod to the barista before standing in line. He scanned the bakery's decor, a mix of rustic charm and polished new touches he had insisted on during renovations. The shelves were stocked. The music was light. But something in the air felt off. He smiled at the cashier, picked out a powdered doughnut just like his mother used to buy for him when he was a kid, and stepped aside to wait for his coffee. That's when he heard them. Two employees behind the counter, Jamal and Tasha, didn't lower their voices enough. Michael caught bits and pieces at first, his ears perking up at the tone more than the words. A bitter laugh. A sneering joke. And then the real venom came. They were talking about a girl in the back, Rosa, the quiet dishwasher with big eyes and an ever-present look of fear. "Did you see her yesterday, jumping like a mouse when I dropped the tray?" one of them said, laughing cruelly. "She thinks this place is her safe haven. Let her think that while we run this show." Michael's heart sank. He stepped closer, still unnoticed. Tasha leaned against the wall, voice lower but clear. "We skim $10 here, 20 there. Bossman don't even exist. It's just the manager, and she don't care." Jamal chuckled. "Exactly. This bakery's a goldmine. And the best part? That little mouse won't squeak no matter what we say. She's too scared we'll tell people what she did." Michael froze. His fingers tightened around the wax paper in his hand. He had built this bakery to be a sanctuary, a place where people rebuilt lives, not tore each other down. The whole idea was personal to him, rooted in his childhood, in memories of his mother scraping together a few dollars to treat him on hard days. To see it turned into a toxic environment by people he trusted was like being sucker-punched in the gut. He could have stormed in right then and there, revealed who he was, fired them on the spot. But something held him back. If they were bold enough to say this out loud, what else were they doing behind closed doors? He needed to know. He needed proof. And most importantly, he needed to understand just how deep this betrayal ran. So instead of confronting them, he dropped a 20 in the tip jar, offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and walked out, powdered doughnut untouched. Michael stepped into the sunlight and pulled out his phone. The bakery may have looked sweet on the surface, but he now saw something bitter brewing underneath. And he wasn't going to let it rot the dream he built from the inside out. Before fame, before red carpets, before blockbuster premieres and magazine covers, there was just a boy sitting on a cracked leather stool beside his mother in a small neighborhood bakery. Michael could still picture it vividly, the scuffed tile floors, the foggy glass display cases, and the gentle clink of change as his mother counted out quarters with care. They never had much, but once a week, she would treat him to one doughnut and a small milk. It was never about the treat itself. It was about feeling normal, even for 5 minutes. It was about comfort, warmth, hope. That bakery became a memory he carried with him all the way through Hollywood, a tiny symbol of peace in a world that often felt harsh. Years later, after his career had taken off and the world knew his name, Michael learned that the bakery was about to be closed and sold. The news hit him harder than expected. The thought of bulldozers flattening the space that once made him feel safe, it didn't sit right with him. So he bought it. Not as Michael B. Jordan the celebrity, but as a silent owner through a shell company. He didn't want fanfare. He didn't want people to buy doughnuts because of who he was. He wanted to protect that piece of his childhood and give others the kind of second chances life rarely offered. He remodeled it gently, keeping the charm while improving the space. He worked with a non-profit group to staff the bakery with people who were often overlooked, folks who had records, gaps in their resumes, or struggles finding stable work. Michael believed in giving people dignity and opportunity. He wasn't naive. He knew not every story would have a happy ending. But he also knew that for some, just one person believing in them could be the difference between falling back or moving forward. He personally interviewed the first hires, though none of them ever knew who he really was. He remembered Rosa especially. She was quiet, barely made eye contact, and had tears in her eyes during the interview. She had fled a dangerous situation, left behind everything, and was desperate for stability. Michael had asked what she wanted most in life, and her answer stuck with him: "I just want to sleep at night without fear." He had told the manager to hire her on the spot. The bakery quickly became more than just a business. It became a quiet revolution. Kids from the neighborhood stopped by after school. Locals dropped in not just for sweets, but for smiles and kindness. Michael would sometimes visit late at night when it was closed, just to sit inside and think. It gave him peace. And seeing people rebuild their lives there gave him hope. He believed he had created something that truly mattered. So when he heard Jamal and Tasha mocking Rosa and talking about theft like it was nothing, something inside him broke. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of what it meant for everyone else. The people who came to the bakery looking for a second chance, the single mother who relied on her job there to feed her kids, the boy who stared wide-eyed at the cookie jars the way he once had. Their sanctuary had been tainted. Michael didn't just feel responsible as an owner. He felt responsible as a human being who had handed people the keys to his heart and asked them to treat it gently. And now, it was clear some of them hadn't. But he wasn't going to abandon the dream just because parts of it had started to rot. He would protect it, and the people who still deserved it, no matter what it took. Because for him, this wasn't just a bakery. It was a promise. And promises, once made, had to be kept. Michael didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, the echo of those voices haunting him. Tasha's laugh, sharp and mocking. Jamal's tone, smug and casual as he bragged about taking what wasn't his. It wasn't just what they said, it was how easily it rolled off their tongues, like this had been going on for a while. Michael had built the bakery to lift people up, not to give space for people like them to tear others down. As the ceiling fan spun above him, he realized he couldn't let this be a one-time observation. He needed to know how deep the rot went. Was it just them? Or were there others? Were the customers at risk? And worst of all, how long had Rosa been suffering without saying a word? The next morning, Michael put a plan in motion. He called his friend Kevin, someone he trusted like a brother, a guy who'd done security work for high-profile clients and knew how to be invisible. Kevin agreed to pose as a deliverman for the bakery's next supply shipment. The idea was simple. Michael would be nearby, monitoring everything through hidden cameras placed throughout the staff-only areas. Kevin would deliver, linger, and play dumb. The goal wasn't confrontation, it was confirmation. They needed proof. Not rumors. Not assumptions. Hard truth. And it didn't take long for the truth to show its face. By the third day, the footage was damning. In the break room, Jamal counted cash he'd pocketed from a short-changed customer order. He stuffed the bills into his sock without hesitation. Later that day, Tasha poured extra inventory into a duffel bag behind the counter, then wrote down fake numbers on the inventory sheet. What hit Michael the hardest wasn't just the stealing, it was the power games. The way they cornered Rosa in the kitchen and spoke to her like she was beneath them. They mocked her accent. Threatened to tell lies about her to get her fired. Told her she owed them silence for a favor they once did when she dropped a tray of plates. "You don't talk," Tasha had whispered on one clip. "Or we'll make sure you disappear. No one will believe you." Michael watched it all in silence, jaw clenched. Rosa had never once come to the manager. She never emailed HR. She didn't even write anonymous notes. She had endured it all, day after day, with her head down, carrying the shame that didn't belong to her. He now understood why she always flinched when someone raised their voice, or why she worked every shift like her life depended on it. Because to her, It probably did. Michael didn't just see an abused employee. He saw his younger self, unsure, voiceless, afraid of losing the one safe space that made life feel okay. That recognition burned inside him. The recordings went on. They showed Jamal making rude comments about customers, calling them names after they left, and laughing about giving someone the wrong order just to mess with them. Tasha joked about deleting bad reviews online or threatening to spit in food if someone complained too much. None of it was funny. None of it could be explained away. This wasn't two employees having a bad day. This was two people poisoning everything he had built from the inside. But the worst moment came on the fourth day. Rosa was working late, cleaning the back sink. The bakery had cleared out. She was humming softly to herself, probably thinking she was finally alone and safe. That's when Jamal and Tasha walked in. The tone was different this time. Colder, sharper. They didn't laugh. They didn't joke. They said her silence was getting annoying. That if she didn't show some gratitude, they might start spreading rumors about her outside of work. Something about her past. Michael didn't know what they were referring to, but he could see the fear in Rosa's eyes on the video. Her back was against the wall. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just nodded and promised to keep her head down. Michael slammed the laptop shut. His hands shook. He had seen enough. This wasn't just workplace bullying. It was targeted, manipulative, and abusive. The very people he had taken a chance on had turned his dream into a nightmare for someone else. He paced the room, heart pounding, thoughts racing. Firing them would be easy. But easy wasn't good enough. He had to send a message, to them, to Rosa, and to every person who had come through those bakery doors thinking they were walking into a better place. He had to remind everyone what the bakery stood for and what it would never tolerate. But the question now was how. Should he show up unannounced and make it public? Should he record their reactions as he revealed who he really was? Part of him wanted to embarrass them the way they embarrassed Rosa. But another part whispered something more powerful. Show them the right way. Make them see what integrity looks like. Michael knew what he had to do. And when he did it, he wasn't going to be anonymous anymore. Michael spent the next 2 days in quiet preparation. Every moment outside his acting schedule was spent reviewing footage, talking to his friend Kevin, and setting up what would become the final phase of his silent investigation. He had a trusted team retrofit the bakery overnight with discreet, high-definition cameras. Nothing intrusive, nothing visible. Just enough coverage to capture what happened when no one thought they were being watched. There were tiny lens points in the staff room clock, behind a vent in the kitchen, even near the back door exit where employees often stepped outside to vent or take a call. It wasn't about spying on everyone. It was about capturing the truth where trust had already been broken. And Michael wasn't going to move forward with accusations unless he had undeniable, irrefutable evidence. The cameras rolled silently over the next few shifts. Michael checked in remotely, watching everything from a private room in his home with headphones on and a notebook by his side. At first, the footage was routine. Regular morning prep, customers in and out, baristas smiling. Nothing out of place. But as the day wore on and the bakery grew quieter, the shift in tone was clear. Jamal arrived 20 minutes late without apology. He threw his apron on the counter and walked straight to the register, stuffing gum into his mouth and tapping through orders with one hand while texting with the other. Tasha leaned against the side wall between customers, openly complaining about customers and work hours. But what hit Michael hardest came during the staff break that afternoon. Hidden in the lounge, the camera captured Jamal and Tasha alone, counting what appeared to be extra cash they skimmed from unrecorded sales. "You just gotta ring it up as a void and say it was a mistake," Jamal said, tossing bills into a bag. "They never check void logs. Too lazy." Tasha rolled her eyes. "I told you, the manager only cares if we don't start fights out front. Behind the curtain, this place is ours." She laughed, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that made anything feel light. It was cold. Entitled. Then she added something Michael would never forget. "That little Rosa girl still thinks we're helping her. She's such an idiot. I told her we covered for her when she messed up that order, but we just didn't care enough to say anything. She owes us. That's why she does what we say." The words made Michael's blood run cold. This wasn't just bad behavior. This was manipulation at its core. Rosa had been mentally shackled by lies, guilt, and fear, and they had built that prison brick by brick. She worked harder than anyone else. Never late. Never asked for anything. Always polite. And now it made sense. She wasn't just quiet. She was surviving. Later that evening, Jamal locked up the register and slipped something into his coat. He passed Tasha near the back, who nodded without a word. The cameras caught it all. Their routines. Their signals. Their quiet coordination. By now, it was clear, this wasn't a one-time offense. It was a system they developed and perfected over weeks, maybe months. They moved with practiced ease. They had no fear of being caught. And worst of all, they acted like they owned the place. Michael watched it unfold, torn between heartbreak and rage. Every frame was another knife to the chest. But he didn't turn away. He had to face it all. Because only by seeing the full picture could he deliver the kind of justice that didn't just punish, it protected. One morning, Rosa came in early. The camera near the sink captured her quietly scrubbing trays, hair tied back, hands raw from soap and heat. She moved in silence, like always. That's when Jamal entered, leaned against the doorway, and asked if she had thought about what they talked about. Her back stiffened. She nodded again, same as before. "Good girl," he muttered before walking out. Michael had to pause the video. He couldn't breathe. He picked up the phone and called the bakery manager, someone he trusted, someone he had handpicked to protect the culture of the place. Without revealing everything, Michael asked if there had been complaints or issues from Rosa. The manager hesitated. "I've noticed she's been quieter lately," she admitted. "But she's never said anything. I asked once and she told me everything's fine. She didn't want to make trouble." Michael thanked her and hung up. That silence spoke louder than anything. Rosa had been suffering in plain sight, and everyone, including him, had missed it. The final recording sealed everything. A customer had asked Rosa for help with a misplaced order. She nervously stepped out front, tried to fix it, and was quickly shoved aside by Tasha, who said, "She doesn't know what she's doing. Let me help you before you get food poisoning." The customer laughed, awkwardly. Rosa stood frozen, cheeks red, then quickly backed into the kitchen. Michael paused the frame there, staring at her expression, the quiet heartbreak of someone being erased in real time. That was the moment he knew this couldn't be handled quietly. It had to be public. Everyone needed to see what had been happening. The staff. The customers. Jamal. Tasha. And most of all, Rosa. Michael made his decision. He would walk into that bakery the next day during the busiest hour. Not in a hoodie. Not hiding. Not as a stranger. But as the man who owned the building, the dream, and the right to demand better. It was Friday morning, and the bakery was packed. The scent of fresh pastries floated through the air, mingling with the soft hum of conversation and the hiss of the espresso machine. Customers stood in line, laughing, scrolling through phones, and sipping their drinks. Behind the counter, staff moved quickly, handling the rush like any other day. But today wasn't like any other day. Today, Michael B. Jordan wasn't walking in quietly. There was no hoodie. No capítulo. No attempt to blend in. He stepped through the door in full view, crisp jacket, confident stride, and eyes laser-focused on the two people behind the register. The room didn't notice him at first, but within seconds, someone gasped. Then another pointed. And then, as if a wave had rippled through the air, the bakery fell silent. Tasha looked up mid-sentence, blinking like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Jamal's mouth fell open. Michael didn't speak right away. He walked slowly to the counter, eyes never leaving them. "Good morning," he said, calm but firm. "I'll take a glazed." "And the truth." Tasha chuckled nervously. Jamal tried to fix his face, offering a half-smile. Wait, is this like a TV thing? Are we getting pranked?" Michael raised one hand, and the manager stepped forward from the back, carrying a small tablet. She placed it on the counter, pressed play, and turned the screen around. The first clip played. It was grainy but clear, Jamal stuffing cash into his sock while muttering about void orders. Tasha looking right at the camera and bragging about how they ran the place. Their voices, their movements, every lie, every theft, every cruel comment, echoed through the bakery. Gasps filled the air. Customers stared. Other employees looked at one another, shocked. Rosa peeked out from the kitchen, unsure if she should stay or flee. Michael turned to face the room, his voice steady. This place was built to give people a second chance. To offer kindness, not cruelty. But some of us forgot that. Jamal's face went pale. Man, we didn't mean, Michael cut him off. You meant every word. And worse, you meant to get away with it. He turned to Tasha. You used someone's silence as a weapon. You turned fear into control. That's not who we are. That's not what this bakery stands for. Tasha stammered, eyes darting to the exit. But no one moved. No one left. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. Then, Michael looked toward the back and called softly, Rosa, can you come out here for a second? The girl hesitated, then stepped forward slowly, her hands trembling. She stopped beside him, head down. Michael turned slightly and spoke to her, his voice warm but full of purpose. You've been stronger than most people I've ever met. You've worked harder, endured more, and asked for nothing. But you deserve everything. You deserve to feel safe. You deserve to feel respected. And most of all, you deserve to speak. He stepped aside, giving her space. Rosa looked around the room, her voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted to do a good job. I didn't want to make trouble. But they made it hard to breathe sometimes. They said they'd ruin my life if I talked. I didn't know who to trust. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Thank you for listening. Michael nodded, then turned back to Jamal and Tasha. You're both done here. Not just because you stole or lied, but because you made someone feel small in a place that was meant to make people feel whole. The manager handed them envelopes, final checks, already calculated. Security's waiting outside to walk you out, Michael added. No drama. No scene. Just a clean break. As they left, heads down and silent, the bakery stayed quiet. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon, the room filled with applause, not for punishment, but for justice. For standing up. For doing the right thing even when it's hard. Michael waited until the room settled, then addressed everyone again. Let this be a reminder. This place is more than flour and sugar. It's a promise. If you work here, you respect that promise. If you shop here, you're part of it too. He then looked at Rosa again. And starting today, we're changing a few things around here. Training. Oversight. But also, he paused, then smiled. We're going to need a new assistant manager. Someone who knows this kitchen better than anyone. Someone who's earned it every single day. Rosa's hands flew to her mouth. The room gasped again. Tears welled in her eyes. Me, she whispered. Michael nodded. You. The applause returned, louder this time. As the moment sank in, the staff surrounded Rosa with hugs. Customers offered words of encouragement. The air felt lighter, like the rot had been cleared away and something good was growing again. Michael stepped back, hands in his pockets, taking it all in. He didn't need credit. He didn't want attention. He just wanted the bakery to feel like home again, for everyone. The following Monday, the bakery opened quietly. There were no balloons, no press, no online announcement. But something felt different. The air was lighter. The regulars still came in, chatting with the staff, sipping their coffee, ordering their favorites. But now, there was a subtle sense of calm beneath the surface, as if the building itself had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Rosa stood at the front register in her new apron, one that said manager in training stitched carefully across the front. Her posture was straighter, her eyes more focused, her voice no longer hesitant when she greeted customers. She still worked hard, she always had, but now she walked with the quiet confidence of someone who knew they belonged. Michael sat at the back table by the window, just like he used to before all of this began. A glazed doughnut sat on his plate, untouched, while he sipped his coffee and watched the flow of the place. He wasn't there to inspect or control anything. He was just watching, observing, letting himself believe, finally, that the dream was still alive. He hadn't torn it down. He'd saved it. Not by shouting or taking revenge, but by making space for the right people to shine. Rosa came over during her break, holding 2 napkins and a fresh cinnamon roll in her hand. She sat down nervously, as if unsure if she should interrupt him. He smiled and motioned for her to join him. For a few seconds, they sat in silence, both just taking in the moment. Then Rosa cleared her throat. "I thought you were just another customer at first. The guy in the hoodie who tipped too much and never said much." Michael chuckled. "I get that a lot." Rosa smiled, but then her expression turned serious. "Why me? Why give me that chance?" Michael leaned forward, thinking for a moment before answering. "Because I saw myself in you. And because I made this place for people who just needed someone to believe in them. You reminded me why I started it." Rosa nodded slowly. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. "Not this time. I thought about quitting so many times," she said softly. "But every time I wanted to give up, something told me to hang on. I didn't know it was you. But now I get it. You gave me a reason to stay." They sat in silence again. Outside, the sky was beginning to cloud over, but the warmth between them remained. Then Rosa looked at him, unsure. "Can I tell you something?" Michael nodded. "Of course." She lowered her voice. "There's something you didn't see. Something the cameras didn't catch." He raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. "The night before everything happened, I came in early. I was scrubbing the floors when I heard a phone call from the back office. The manager forgot to lock her computer. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard Jamal talking to someone about opening a side bakery. He said he was planning to take the recipes, the customer list, everything. He said this place was just a test run." Michael's jaw clenched, but he kept his tone even. "Did you hear who he was talking to?" Rosa shook her head. "No name. But it sounded serious. Like, they had a plan." Michael leaned back, taking it in. It didn't surprise him, but it still stung. Even after being caught, Jamal had intended to tear something down and use it for himself. It reminded Michael of all the times people had tried to take credit for his work, ride his success, or chip away at what he built. But he wasn't going to let that happen here. He looked at Rosa, her face calm but determined. "Thank you for telling me. And thank you for staying." She smiled softly. "I'm not going anywhere. This place saved me." Michael nodded. "Then let's make sure it keeps saving others." Later that day, he called in his legal team quietly and began setting up an extra layer of protection around the bakery's assets. Not out of fear, but to make sure no one ever exploited it again. The new systems were subtle: updated contracts, recipe copyrights, and tighter training protocols. But the heart of the place stayed the same. It wasn't about control. It was about care. Over the weeks that followed, small changes took root. Staff meetings began with a moment of gratitude. A suggestion box appeared in the corner, and people actually used it. Rosa's ideas led to a new pay-it-forward board, a place where customers could leave prepaid items for someone who needed them. A man who once slept in his car walked in one morning, found a note that said coffee and muffin, no charge, and left with tears in his eyes. The bakery had become what Michael always wanted it to be, not just a place to eat, but a place to heal. One afternoon, as he got up to leave, Rosa caught him at the door. "Michael," she said. He turned. "Thank you for forgiving me for not speaking up sooner." He gave her a small smile. "You don't have to say that. You did nothing wrong." She nodded, but her voice was firm. "Still, thank you." He held the door open and looked back one last time. The lights, the faces, the soft music, the smell of baked goods, it was all there. But what filled him most was knowing that kindness had won. As he walked out into the street, the clouds finally broke, and a soft sun lit up the sidewalk. He didn't look back again. He didn't need to. The bakery was in good hands now. And some stories didn't need to end with applause. Some just needed to keep going quietly, one doughnut at a time.